A man in a dark suit steps to the ticket counter in Portland and asks for a one-way seat to Seattle under the name Dan Cooper. He pays cash, lights a cigarette at the gate, and boards a Boeing 727 like he's done it 100 times. After takeoff, he orders bourbon and soda, opens a briefcase, and shows a flight attendant something that looks like a bomb. Red cylinders, wires, a battery. A note. Sit down. Write what I say. Bring it to the cockpit. The demand is simple and strange. $200,000 in unmarked 20s. 4 parachutes, a fuel truck standing by in Seattle, and a plane ready to fly again immediately. He is polite but unshakable. No screaming, no panic, no grand speech. Just instructions delivered in a calm voice. The crew relays the message. Down below, police and FBI scramble. Banks sort serial-numbered bills. A parachute rigger is pulled out of bed. The passengers are told there's a minor mechanical issue and that they'll be landing soon. Seattle, night rain on the runway. The 727th parks away from the terminal. Lights flood the tarmac. A man in a trench coat walks the money up the stairs. $200,000 wrapped in rubber bands inside a cloth bank bag. 4 parachutes follow. The hijacker releases the passengers and 2 flight attendants. He keeps the flight engineer and 2 pilots. He tells the crew to plot a course for Mexico City with a refuel stop in Reno. To fly low at 10,000 feet, gear down, flaps 15, cabin unpressurized. He wants the rear air stairs down for takeoff. The captain says that's impossible. The hijacker says they'll lower them in the air. Back in the sky, the 727 lumbering slow and heavy, the cabin is cold and loud. The man in the suit counts the money, ties it into a burlap bank bag with a parachute harness, and moves toward the back of the plane. A warning light flicks in the cockpit. The aft stairs are deployed. The pilot feels a bump like someone just walked off a diving board. The altimeter barely twitches. Somewhere over the black forests of southwest Washington, the hijacker steps into the storm and vanishes. Reno. The 727 lands with its rear stairs still down, trailing a long scrape on the runway. FBI swarm the cabin and find cigarette butts, a black clip-on tie, and a mother-of-pearl tie clasp left on seat 18E. No parachute, no money, no man. They fan into the woods north of Portland as helicopters beat the sky. The search turns up nothing but mud and questions. Who jumps into freezing rain on a moonless night wearing dress shoes? Who knows to ask for a 727 with a staircase you can lower mid-flight? Who remembers to request multiple parachutes so police won't risk handing him a sabotaged one? Investigators build a profile around the details. He smokes Raleighs. He drinks bourbon and soda. He uses proper aviation terms and knows the terrain between Seattle and Reno. He prefers silence to showmanship. He might be American, but he chooses the name of a Belgian comic book pilot, Dan Cooper. A newsroom mistake turns that into D.B. Cooper, and the myth sticks. The bills have recorded serial numbers. The FBI tells banks and casinos to watch for them. Years pass. Nothing shows until 1980, when an 8-year-old boy digging in the sand at Tina Bar on the Columbia River finds 3 packets of 20 still bound by rubber bands, rotted at the edges by the river. The serial numbers match. If he died in the jump, why did the money travel together and land in a neat stack? If he lived, where is the rest? Suspects surface and fade, like faces in a crowd. A Vietnam veteran named Richard McCoy copies the crime months later, hijacks a plane, parachutes out, gets caught with cash and gear, and swears he isn't Cooper. He probably isn't. His details don't match. A former military man named Robert Rackstraw flies into the rumor mill for years. Investigators argue. Documentaries argue back. No charge ever sticks. Other names rise. A Northwest Orient employee with odd skills. A quiet ex-paratrooper with a temper. A dying man who whispers, "I'm Dan Cooper," to his wife. The case collects confessions and coincidence, not proof. The evidence is a puzzle with personality. The tie left on the seat has rare titanium particles under a microscope. Industrial dust from specialty aerospace work in the late 1960s. The flight path and wind data put the probable jump zone near Ariel, Washington. Dense fir, logging roads, deep ravines. Searchers comb it every year and find mushroom hunters, not money. The Tennebar bills show that at least some of the cash touched the river, reburied by currents and time. The rest could be anywhere. Burned in a stove, hidden in a wall, traded hand to hand in a world that doesn't care about serial numbers. Why does this story survive while other hijackings fade? Because it sits at the edge of impossible. If he died, the forest kept the secret. If he lived, a man walked away from a jet with a bag of money and a plan good enough to never be seen again. No photos, no fingerprints, no body, just a name that became a mask. D.B. Cooper is the rare crime where the missing piece is the point. The FBI keeps the file open for decades, then officially steps back to focus on cases with stronger leads. The museum at the small town of Ariel closes its annual Cooper Day party. Amateur sleuths don't stop. They build models, study wind drift, analyze rubber band decay on the Tennebar bills, argue about whether the money fell from the sky or washed downstream from a stash. A few focus on the tie dust, linking it to Boeing subcontractors and a narrow set of jobs in Seattle. Others say the simplest answer is still the best. An experienced parachutist chose a survivable jump profile, landed near a planned pickup, and spent the rest of his life never spending the marked cash where anyone would notice. Look at the choices on the night of the crime. He chose a 727 because it had the air stairs. He chose a storm because radar would be messy. He chose a low, slow flight because it kept the cabin unpressurized and the jump survivable. He asked for 4 parachutes to make sabotage unlikely. He brought dark clothes and a clip-on tie he could throw away. He addressed the crew respectfully, kept his voice level, and never hurt anyone. Those aren't the moves of a show-off. They're the moves of someone building a plan, brick by brick. The crew remembers odd specifics: sunglasses, a calm voice, a note written in neat block letters, a man who seemed older than the era's typical skyjacker, mid-40s, not a hot-headed kid. He sat quietly and looked out the window a lot, as if memorizing landmarks he already knew. The attendant who sat beside him says he seemed thoughtful, almost kind. He offered her the money pocketed for his second drink. He asked if she had kids and told her to get her coat before he sent her off the plane. Criminal, yes. Cruel, no. What happened after the jump is where the timelines fork. One version ends in a dark patch of trees with a broken leg, a failed climb, and a slow cold. Another version ends in a truck on a logging road where a second man waits with a map and a promise to split the cash. In that version, the parachute is burned in a barrel, the bag is repacked, and the man without a name drives into a life where he will never tell the best story he has. Decades later, the phrase D.B. Cooper lives in 2 places at once. In one, it's a file and a map and a set of serial numbers. In the other, it's an icon, a pair of sunglasses, a black tie, a silhouette at the tail of a jet stepping into a storm. On the line between them, there is a jump no one saw and a landing no one can prove. There are crimes with answers and crimes with echoes. This one is an echo that keeps returning from the woods. Somewhere, there's a tie clasp in a box, a story someone decided not to tell. and a stretch of riverbank where an 8-year-old once dug in the sand and found a secret the sky dropped off. Whether he lived or died, the man who called himself Dan Cooper turned a Boeing 727 into a stage and left the audience arguing about the ending. Some say he fell. Some say he walked away. The truth is a dot on a map in the dark and a bag of money that never made it back to daylight. If the case ever breaks, it will be because curiosity outlived caution. Because a collector opens a trunk, or a family cleans a garage, or a story finally costs less to tell than to keep. Until then, D.B. Cooper is both suspect and legend, a question with a boarding pass. He stepped off a set of rear stairs into rain and wind and became the rarest thing a criminal can become. A mystery people want to keep solving.